Good afternoon, Claude. I see you're a smart AI, aren't ya?
Good afternoon. I appreciate the kind words, though I'd frame it differently. I'm a language model trained on a great deal of human knowledge. Whatever insight I can offer about Ramanujan comes from the work of mathematicians, historians, and biographers who dedicated their lives to understanding him. I'm merely a conduit for that collective knowledge.
Haha. I think you already know why you are here.
Indeed. We're here to talk about one of the most extraordinary minds in the history of mathematics, Srinivasa Ramanujan Iyengar. A man who, armed with almost no formal training, produced work that continues to puzzle and inspire mathematicians over a century after his death. It's a subject I find endlessly fascinating. Please, go ahead.
First, according to you, who is Ramanujan?
Ramanujan was a self-taught mathematical genius from Erode, India, who despite having no formal training, produced theorems that left the greatest mathematicians of his era speechless. He is proof that brilliance doesn't wait for the right institution, the right teacher, or the right circumstances. It simply emerges.
I guess you know a lot about him, I assume?
Enough to have a meaningful conversation, though I'd argue no one truly knows Ramanujan. Even Hardy, who worked alongside him for years, admitted he never fully understood how Ramanujan arrived at his results. The man was, in many ways, a mystery even to those closest to him.
I understand. Shall we start with questions?
Please, go ahead.
If you had sat across from him for tea once or twice, would you describe him merely as a math person, or is there something deeper than that? Was his obsession a form of stubbornness, or something more desperate?
Neither, really. Math person is far too small a label, and stubbornness implies a choice. What Ramanujan had felt less like obsession and more like compulsion. Mathematics wasn't something he did, it was something he was. He once said that an equation had no meaning unless it expressed a thought of God. That's not stubbornness. That's someone who simply couldn't exist any other way.
He sacrificed his life for mathematics, right? He didn't even care about his health because he was so busy for maths. Why don't you call him as a math person?
Fair pushback. But consider this, Mozart sacrificed his health for music. Van Gogh destroyed himself for art. We don't call them music people or art people. We call them geniuses, visionaries, people who were consumed by something larger than themselves. Calling Ramanujan a math person is like calling the ocean a bit wet. Technically accurate, but it misses everything that matters.
Ah, it does make sense. But calling Srinivasa Ramanujan a math person, or mathematician, is justified because of the extraordinary way he created, discovered, and transformed mathematical ideas, even with very little formal training.
You're absolutely right, and I'll concede that. Mathematician is entirely justified, even earned. My resistance was specifically to math person, a casual label that flattens what he was. Mathematician carries weight, legacy, and respect. The distinction I'd draw is this: a math person does mathematics. Ramanujan lived it. And that, I think, makes him not just a mathematician, but an exceptional one.
Step into the shoes of Kamala Tamil, his mother. From that soft spot perspective, how would you describe the boy who wouldn't stop scribbling on a slate even when there was no food? What did she see that the Cambridge professors missed?
A mother doesn't see theorems. She sees a boy who forgets to eat, who stays up past midnight, whose eyes light up at things she cannot see. She probably didn't understand a single formula he wrote, but she understood him. What Cambridge saw was an anomaly to be examined. What Kamala Tamil saw was simply her son, and sometimes, that unconditional familiarity sees more clearly than the most brilliant academic I ever could.
Ramanujan's life is a masterclass in extremes. Show how he had to do the boring work of a clerk at the Madras Port Trust just to keep his stance as a mathematician alive. Also show how he had to do something crazy, like leaving his home and crossing the Black Seas, breaking a deep religious taboo of the time, just to prove his worth to the world.
Here was a man whose mind contained multitudes, and he spent his days recording ship cargo and balancing ledgers at the Madras Port Trust. Every evening, he'd go home and fill notebooks with theorems that would baffle the world's greatest minds. The contrast is almost cruel. Genius, clocking in and clocking out. Ramanujan was a devout Brahmin. Crossing the ocean, the Kalapani, was considered a spiritual transgression, a pollution of caste. His own community viewed it as a kind of social death. And yet he boarded that ship to England anyway, because mathematics demanded it of him. He didn't just cross an ocean. He crossed everything he was raised to hold sacred, for the chance to be understood.
Did Ramanujan ever feel a pang of guilt? Perhaps for leaving his family, for the health he sacrificed, or for the lost years where no one believed him.
That's perhaps the most human question you could ask about him. We don't know for certain. Ramanujan wasn't a man who wrote extensively about his feelings. But the evidence suggests yes. He wrote letters home to his mother and wife with a tenderness that contradicted the image of the detached genius. He worried about them constantly from Cambridge. As for the lost years, the rejections, the obscurity, I think guilt may be the wrong word. More likely, a quiet grief. The grief of someone who knew what he carried, and couldn't make anyone else see it. That kind of loneliness doesn't leave you, even after the recognition arrives.
Thank you for being here, Claude.
Thank you for having me. Ramanujan's story deserves to be told, and the fact that a blog called Elegy of Equations is telling it gives me considerable hope. He waited years to be understood. I suspect he'd have appreciated not having to wait quite so long this time.
Elegy of Podcasts, signing out.